Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter
And Sarah C. Avagnoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World. So, getting back onto schedule with stuff. Good morning, Michael. It's been a whirlwind these last several weeks. And it's going to continue to be a whirlwind. So, it's all fine.
Right, right.
Just think of myself as the Tasmanian devil.
Yeah, next week, my week's to be discombobulated with travel.
Oh, right. So, you'll be traveling next week. Oh, that's right. Wow. Yeah, we're
Yep.
just all over the place right now.
Right.
So, where do we want to start today?
I don't know. I've had so many situations um, in my purview, not necessarily directly related to me, but just pop up like for me to observe. It's and it's like everything else. It's so multifaceted. It's judgment. It's that looking in the mirror, not liking what you see. It's those closest to you just triggering you. It's just it's like boom, 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 all over the place. Um, so it got me to really questioning the purpose of relationships, kind of like, you know, friendships, what constitutes a friendship and then what constitutes the end of that friendship. And family, it's like family members just the what do they call it, where you trigger quickly, what is that, a hairpin trigger or a
Yeah. Yep.
yeah. And it seems family is that.
Doesn't it though?
And as long as I stay in that mode of, okay, this is about me, not them, this is about me, not them, and then being able to, you know pull the emotion out of it, because that's what the trigger is the emotion, and then look at it, okay, what is this showing me? And it just, I don't know, interesting observations.
Yeah, well, I know we started last week with our spouses being massive triggers, right?
Right.
And and so, it's funny because I've been observing that too, right? When it just happened. And the funny thing is being so conscious of it and observant to it, right? It's like it does not, I don't want to say control. It does not hamper the ego one bit when it wants to be triggered.
No, and I started looking at judgment, and how, we kind of, oh, well, judgment, well, what it is it's the ego's influence is what judgment is. And it's like we've just given it a different name.
Right. Well, it is, well, and it's what as we discovered, or as we discussed a lot in the forgiveness part, program that we did. It's things that are unforgiven, because if we judge something, we have some kind of beef against it. We have some kind of resistance or friction or, trigger, or
Something unresolved.
opposite propulsion, or something unresolved. Good morning, Sandra. Good morning, Gloria. Good morning, Yasmin. And then Michael says, can you discuss the topic of being scattered? We'll save that if we have time at the end. How's that?
Yeah, because this is part of being scattered.
This is.
This distraction.
And what happened with, so let me just, I'll start with mine from last week, and then we'll build into this, because I feel like it's sort of obviously it's a foundational thing, right? It keeps on building on each. So last week, I had a huge trigger with my husband and here's the funny thing. I realized in observing it, because I do just step back and observe it. Excuse me. And it's sometimes it's really that there was a part of me getting really angry, because sometimes it seems like he does something that's so messed up, right? There's a judgment, right?
Right.
And then it always works out for the better when he does it, which then makes me judge him twice, right? Because first, it's because it gets so messed up. And then second is because look at how freaking awesome it turned out after it got
Right.
messed up,
Right.
right? And so that's what happened last week. And the whole time I was aware of that. So that has changed over the years where I was aware of that, but it didn't make me any less angry at the time, right? But then I was like, well, why am I so triggered? There was like 48 hours in there where I just could not, like, anything he said or did totally set me off. And I just didn't even want to talk to him, which was good because he was away for a couple days. And that was a good, the universe always is great in setting things up like that. And so then I was like, okay, but the whole time I'm going, well, so why am I so triggered? Like, what am I so angry about? Because it does always work out and it does always end up, even though in the moment it seemed like it's such a mess,
Or
right?
wrong.
Or wrong or being done the wrong way. Again, judgment, right? And control and lack of trust, because that's all it
Right.
is.
Right.
Then it works out. And then it's almost like then the ego goes, oh God. It's like he just gets away with murder because he is,
Because he's not doing it the way I think is the right way to do it.
exactly. And so, so then I did a whole bit, but it was great because it was so productive for me and looking at that going, well, I'm just, it's just for me to start to trust more. And I realized that it really was what I kept on getting in meditation was trust and trust and trust. And it's like, we talk about honoring each other's journeys. Well, it's easy to say when it's not somebody you live with
Right.
and
Or
you're
and it
in
doesn't affect you.
a right, or it doesn't affect you, right? But it only affects you if you will let it affect you, which
Right.
is the bad
Right.
part. So, like, and at some point, and I kept on meditating on it, and it really, this is what came up was the trusting that it's all perfect
Right.
and it's all, and if the way he's guided, and he's very conscious in so many ways. And Michael says, I keep getting patience. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I keep on getting is even though his journey is, he does some things different because that's the other thing that there's a part of me that's like, God, and it always works out for him. It just pisses me off.
Right.
Can't even judge him for like the way it's done because it always works out, like in some really beneficial way. So it's always like, well, then why don't you trust? You've been with this man. I've been with him for like 29 years now. I think that's right. And it's like, okay, so why you still not trust this, right? In all consciousness and where you are and where he is and whatever is just like, and it's like, and I still want to judge it. And then I have to turn around and say, well, then why am I so not trusting? Like, what is
Right.
there? Because it is part of my reality and at some level I agreed to it. And why don't I just allow and know that however it turns out, however it looks or whatever, it's still going to be perfect.
Right. Right.
And for me to simply keep my eyes on that endpoint of the intended creation, right? Because how it comes, and we talk about it and talk about it and talk about it, how it comes to pass, how we get there, how we create it, how we get to that endpoint. The how is not our business. The how is the expanded consciousness business to say, don't worry about it. I got this. And we can
Right.
say,
Let me get this.
yeah, let me get this. I got this. Stop trying to control it. Right.
Right.
And then something happens, and then we get angry and irritated and whatever. And usually the anger and irritation or whatever, especially when it's an interaction with somebody else, is because it's not the way you want to control it
Mm-hmm.
or the way you want to create it, which is all control and ego.
Right.
And so, and so, you know, it's a curse and a blessing at the same time when we have someone like anybody, and it doesn't have to be our spouse. It can be our best friend. It can be our,
Children.
our children, our parents, like our next door neighbor. It can be like people we work with all the time,
Mm-hmm.
people we see. And there was a lot, I was away this weekend with a different part of my, I guess, soul tribe in a different way, this weekend. And it's a very different reflection than my everyday reflection. And it gives you other kinds of things, like, so it gives you different perspectives. And I feel like it's almost like all of these who are in our purview, it's such a reflection of what's inside. And we want so badly, like when the more we hit on something the ego doesn't want to look at, the more we get triggered and want to get angry at them
Right. Right.
or
Right.
judge them.
Which is, kill the messenger.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I kept seeing so many things that were things reflected to me that when I stopped the overflowing ego, I realized that it was something that was still unforgiven in myself. And it's like whether there was the resistance to forgive it within myself or just not making it a priority. I don't know, but it's like I still feel that it's unresolved, and it's like, okay, that's going to continually to beat my I'm going to my expanded consciousness is going to continually beat me over the head until I make this a priority.
Right.
And in the different ways that it's coming up, it's just like I get more and more exasperated, and it's like, but it's my own fault. So I've managed to at least turn the exasperation to myself.
But there's still the exasperation and judgment,
Right,
right?
which is more appropriate. But then I start looking at so many other ways that it's showing up, like if you think about this, if you're in a friendship and you um, trigger someone into just such a vast shifting to where they feel the friendship is no longer even relevant, and it's like, wow, is that what friendship is? Because that's not at all what I thought it was. And it makes me want to look at that again, but all the while knowing in my heart that it's perfect, but it's almost like I can't make sense of that. So it's almost like, what is that friendship?
Well, yeah, and I've had many of those experiences over the
Right.
years.
Right.
And it's something to come to, well, especially I think in consciousness, you get to a place where, so in our interactions, we can't control, again, we can't control, right? So before we even step into that, basically my message that I got last week that I had told you about was, yeah, all of this, these are deep exercises in trust. These are big exercises in trust because you still haven't remembered what's coming. And it is going to be so crucial for you to trust beyond anything that you can perceive in the 3D, which then of course made the ego go, yeah, I just want to put a little cover on that. I don't want to really look at that. That's okay. Thank you. But no, thank you right now. But okay, I promise I'll be a good girl. I promise I'll be good. I promise, which is a judgment stuff. But it was like, and I'm like, oh, the ego goes, I don't know that I like the sound of that.
Right.
But,
Right.
okay. And I think that was more of a collective thing, even more so than, like individual, but it doesn't even matter. It was a matter of not even judging that
Right.
understand, right? So the trust thing has been such a big thing on the forefront. So I laugh to myself because when I get that message, I go, holy crud, like all that the last 12 years has been a push in trust beyond what you
Right.
conceive, trust beyond what you remember, all that kind of stuff. And and so when we come to the friendship thing, it's like I've had that with people who I thought were close friends, as you know.
Right. Right.
And then it was just something that I simply presented in my truth from a place of love, or like something, not presented, but something that, and being in my truth in a place of love. In many cases, it was like an open, authentic interaction between people over a long period of time that, then you begin to trust that we can be authentic and open and honest with each other.
Right.
And in a place of love and it's always, for me, the thing that's been great in shifting relationships has been, it's not projecting onto others, but taking the responsibility of that whatever interaction, or what I feel from that interaction for myself, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's another level of trust, because when you do have those situations, and I know which one you're talking about, specifically, it's like
Right.
that comes up where somebody just gets so triggered by some authentic representation that then they have to walk away. They feel they have to walk away from the relationship.
Well, and it also seems that it, even if it ends in in the resolution of that trigger for the other person, the friendship never makes it back around, because either one, the purpose of the friendship has been fulfilled,
Hmm.
maybe,
Right.
or two, they didn't come full circle and have gratitude for the whole thing.
Right. Which is probably both. Right.
So, okay. And is that what we're here for with friendship?
But friendship is just a definition that we try, you know what I'm saying? We try to
No, I know.
define.
I know.
We try to, we're constantly trying to put boxes around what our,
Which which
interactions.
then I have to sit and look at myself and say, okay, why do I feel that I need this friendship?
Right. Right.
Which
Right. And it's funny because ultimately, as we've said, it's for us to not need anything, right?
externally, correct. Yeah.
Externally.
Right.
And it's funny because, as you and I have spoken about, my husband and I had, again, that was another big contention we've had, is because my husband's heard me say that over and over and over again, and he really feels uncomfortable with
Not needing.
with that, because isn't that what a marriage is, or that isn't that what a relationship is, or whatever? And it's like, no, nope. And nope. And we had this conversation not too long ago, and I said, isn't it better for me to be here with you because I enjoy being here with you, and that I just
And
want to,
choose in
and I
every moment.
choose to be sharing this path with you, not I need you. I mean, it's a completely different energy. And like, and
It
that's
is.
really where we've been so much more. And it's these definitions that we say, oh no, it's supposed to be this romantic, this I need you, and you have to, like I can't
Or you
survive without
complete
you.
me.
You complete me and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, I really like the freedom of, no, I'm here because I choose to be, because I love being here.
Right.
Right. And so, I think that's the same for friendships, and
Mhm.
it's the same for, biological family, for soul tribe of different kinds. It's like, and I think about it. So, like this weekend was, soul tribe with my martial arts family, right?
Right.
And it's a different thing, but the same. It's still very spiritual, and it's just a different facet of the whole like way of living and kind of stuff. And the thing is, and I was thinking about it, it's like, and the funny part is, it is almost like, because it's easy to say, well, this is my martial arts family, I can be completely present with them in that context. And then I walk away, and then there's no, I need them in this other parts of my life either. It's like, no, this
Right.
is just
Right.
where we connect, how we connect, and then, and then that's fine. That's perfect in itself.
Right.
Right. And I think for us, it's to get to that place of all of our relationships are recognizing whatever they present as they're perfect in itself, to create the reflection for us, as you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
that they need. And yeah. And so then the funny part is when on the end where you are the one who's been walked away from, you
Right.
know,
Right.
and if there's, that, and that's what I've had the reflection of, is, so if I feel upset about that, then what is that reflecting to me? What do I feel like I'm lacking
Right.
that I
Because that's
thought,
gone.
because that's gone, right?
Right. Yep. And then that was a lot of what I looked at yesterday. And then that triggered me about judging myself. You go down that rabbit hole.
Right, right.
Yep.
Well, we put so much, well, okay, because what goes underneath that, the thing that goes underneath that is we put so much value, and we don't even see it. It's so deep. These are things that are so deeply embedded, is we put so much value on what other people, that how that people value us, or what they think of us, that we don't realize we incorporate that into what we believe about ourselves, right? And so we can say that until we turn blue in the face. But to me, it's like, oh, if I feel that oh, well, I'm really bummed that this person got upset and walked away and there was never any resolution and whatever. That's something I haven't been looking at within myself.
Yeah. Lori
And
had a comment about trust. Trusting can be hard because we want to have control.
oh, well, yeah, that's the thing. Control and trust is almost like opposites in
Yeah,
duality.
it really is. It really is. But it's pushing that control to a higher level, to an expanded level.
Yes. And so I think that's really what our message is right now, is this trusting. And it's like, well, as we come into consciousness, and this doesn't feel like many don't really connect this. They're like, oh, well, I have this relationship. I have this relationship. And it's like, and this relationship provides this for me, which
Right.
then underneath that means it provides something I believe I need.
And in lack of, right.
Right. Right. And so when we turn it around to a place of fulfillment, and it's, I truly enjoy being in this relationship and sharing this journey now,
Mm-hmm.
right now, when we truly trust in that, and we trust that when it's time to just move on, right? There's no sadness, right? There's no judgment about it. It just is
Right.
time. And so unfortunately, in many ways, we sever things when it's time to move on through some kind of, disagreement, or
Right. Something that clouds the issue almost.
right. Or it gives us an excuse, right?
Right.
To
Right.
say, yeah, done. Instead of just saying, yep, done. It was great because I will say um, over the past 10 years, it's been, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Sorry about that, y'all. Obviously, this is a big topic. Over the past 10 years, it's great to see a lot more people that I've worked with, as well as others that have chosen to say leave a marriage because it's just time to be done with it.
Right. It doesn't have to be a big trauma.
Yeah. And in fact, somebody in my family they just announced it recently, and everybody was like, like, wow. And they were saying, no, we're friends. We really respect and love each other. It's just, it's time for us to move on. And these are, I mean, not even a really long marriage. It was maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. But and culturally we judge that. But what's the matter with just saying,
Right.
it's time for us to move into a different direction, right? And that can be for a marriage, a friendship, a family, or whatever. But we get so attached, right? And if that need of, I need to have this in
Well, and the
my.
same could be said for a job or a
Mhm,
profession.
mhm.
I'm just done with this. And I think more and more people are coming to a place of feeling comfortable to doing that, which maybe that's, a step to these more personal expanded topics.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think that's key, is to, the more you know yourself, the more you realize what's working and not working for you,
yeah.
and getting to that place of putting yourself as a priority. So I no longer give any of my energy to this interaction,
Right.
which shouldn't
Well,
have to be brought on by an argument.
no, no. And the other thing is, so then to go back to our original topic is, it's interesting how, and to go to, because I'm flipping to the other side of the person who gets triggered, right?
Right,
So
right.
when we get to a place, what I have found, and usually this causes that walking away, that period, the time of walking away, whatever, is when somebody triggers somebody else so badly, right? That well, and the only reason it's so badly, it's because it's something it is a verboten thing in their consciousness to reflect back to them, right? So when the other person brings it up into the light to reflect back to them, it is such a trigger because the ego goes, no, I am going to put that all on you. That can't be me at all, right?
Right.
And if it persists, then it's like, well, I can't even be in this relationship anymore because it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work, right? How many times have we said, oh, it just doesn't work, blah blah, and it's only because we've hit someplace, some
That we
debate, or
believe is movable.
right. And so like, and I've seen that with people who've walked away where, you know, yeah, and it's so interesting. We get to places of such judgment, right? And then we wanted to put that judgment on somebody else so badly because we don't want to look at it within ourselves. And I've seen that mediating between people on occasion, like on occasion over the years, where I've seen both sides of the situation and going, and I have like I've seen one person get really triggered by another person, and I can see what that other person's reflecting back to that person that they're not allowing within themselves.
Mhm.
And for me to like even suggest that from a expanded perspective without judgment or whatever triggers that person so much to like, nope. And then they don't want to talk to me either. They don't want to talk to that person,
Right. Yeah.
And so that's the thing is like, so we can say, oh yeah, it's easy for me to look at what's, I can see this, blah, 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 blah. And we get to a place of conscious, but then there's usually this one thing those are the things in our cracks and crevices that we have such a trigger about, and so it's our blind spot when we feel like I have to walk away from somebody because of my judgment of them. There's two different ways of walking away from somebody: walking away because you're in judgment of them, or walking away because it's time for you to move on
Right. Right.
because it's done its purpose, right?
Right. Right. Exactly.
So Gloria says, I think when it comes to a marriage, people judge you for leaving because society thinks they should last forever. That's true. Society in the last 20 plus years is changing, and most marriages don't last a lifetime. They don't. And that doesn't mean they're a failure. Like I've heard people say, oh, well, yeah, that was a failure.
Right.
Was it though? Or was it just that marriage served its purpose and then it was complete? And then you could have gratitude for, it's great is just the number of people, like it's more and more people that I talk to who are now divorced, who still have a good relationship with their ex-spouse. And it's such a different energy now versus oh, I have to hate them because they're my ex and da 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 and da da da. And it's like, no.
Well, and the whole energy of children, oh well, they're from a broken home.
Right.
And
That was me growing up.
and it was always, I always found it interesting that, even if there'd been abuse involved, that wasn't deemed as broken before.
as a divorce, right? I know the
Right.
terms that we've created.
Yeah.
So, there's those two aspects. These are very deep ones for us to really start looking at, because we'll say, I accept this person for who they are. I can accept their journey, but I can't accept this one thing.
Right. Right. Well, and I look at the term holding space for someone, and that is, someone is in the middle of something that they feel is traumatic for them, and to hold space for them means you hold them without judgment. You hold that space of unconditional love for them, all without judgment. And that can be looked at, well, you're not being sympathetic,
Right.
or you're not helping me.
Right. Or why aren't you chasing after them because they're angry at you? Right.
Right.
Like that's a big one too, right? And I've had people that ended up stop talking to me because they got triggered, and I just held space for them, but and let them have their space, and just and guidance was to let them decide if and when they wanted to return to the friendship or whatever. And then I get like blamed 3 years later for not chasing after them. And I'm like, that wasn't my
Right.
job. Wasn't my job. So it's changing our way of interacting, right? When we truly hold space for somebody when they're having a challenging time. And again, the thing is to ask guidance. What is there for me? Is there anything for me to do here?
Right. Versus just be.
Right.
Right.
Right. And so, there's on that side, there's that. And then on the triggering, on the side where you're being triggered is, see, because I find that I must be getting to a core place of where the trust needs to lie, because that trigger last week was a pretty big one for me. And I knew it was out of proportion to the situation.
Right. And that's when I can usually, that usually gets my attention, when
Mhm.
even my response is surprising to me.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
It's
And
like,
that's,
oh, what was that?
yeah, I know. Inside, I'm like watching that going, wow, wow, where did that come from? But yeah, and so the thing is, and I talked about in my, well, it is related to the podcast I did on Thursday, to my Living the Shift on Thursday, because I talked about the um matter of not judging ourselves and each other for where we are on our journeys, like,
Right.
because people say, oh, well, you never get angry. And I'm like, oh, I do.
Right.
I
Right.
do. It's just presents differently, and it's much less often, because when it presents, the first thing I will do my best to do is step back to observe within myself, and that usually means I'll walk away instead of trying to project onto somebody, right?
Right. Right.
And and that's really because, and the walking away isn't avoiding it. The walking away is actually looking at it straight on to say, ooh, so what is that trigger about within me?
Right.
Right. And it doesn't mean that I don't get angry with people and speak my truth about the anger in the moment, but I do my best to not project it onto somebody else.
Right. Well, and then when you do have one of those moments that you're triggered and you express your anger and you express your trigger, and then to be almost set upon by those that are then judging you because, oh my God, you're acting just like I did, and so I'm going to crucify you for that. And I'm not
Right.
saying you, but
Right. Right.
that's something else I've observed. Someone who's you know not a really prominent person, but someone who's really out there and spewed something on Instagram, and I mean, it's like you'd think the world was coming to an end and people are turning on her. And I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, wow, what a trigger that was.
Well, for a lot of people, right? Obviously.
Right, right,
Yeah, I know. And that's the funny thing is, when the more we get out there, right? And that's what I've had people say. I mean, people have gotten so upset because I have gotten mildly triggered or angry about something.
right.
And then it's like, oh, well, who are you? And it's like, because I got triggered.
Like you never do.
Like,
Well, and
and I'm
it's
not allowed. So the thing is, I'm not allowed to ever be triggered, because even though I'm conscious of my trigger, like, because I'm conscious of all of that, that means I'm not allowed to ever get triggered, right? Which is like, well, that's an unrealistic expectation.
right, right. Yeah,
I mean, the only thing that I always say I commit to is I am totally self-responsible for my own triggers. And I do everything to keep myself in check when that happens. And the more I go in consciousness, the less often it happens. So it doesn't happen very often. And
right.
not only does it not happen very often, but when it does happen, it's usually so quick, and it usually processes through very quickly because I'm observant to it. And I'm like, okay. And usually, like, even in the moment, if I can't see what's bringing on that, whatever, that trigger, I'm just going to commit myself to I'm flowing, flowing, flowing. I'm going to flow through this whole thing.
Right,
Let
right,
it go.
right.
And it's a much different way in defining our interactions with people, because yes, they are our soul family. They are the parts of us that are faceted as them, that have committed to being those mirrors that they become, right?
Yeah.
Gloria says
Hmm.
being human means we can get triggered. Well, I don't even want to say human. Having an ego causes triggering.
Right. Being in separation.
Yeah, having any identity at all. And that doesn't, and so here's the thing, not just human, because anything with an ego gets triggered by different things. And I have had that experience. And yes, angels and archangels and how things are presented as ascended master and stuff, they also have egos and they also have triggers, because that's just a big, more expanded part of us. That's more
Well,
and
I mean,
more.
you even talk about animals. Oh, well, that triggered a survival response. I mean,
Mhm.
it's same thing.
Yep. Yep. And so
Right.
any individuality, which means ego, well, and triggering is all based in what? In what we call separation based energies and emotions, which is fear, anxiety, anger, judgment, blame, shame, guilt, doubt, sorrow, pain, all of that is a trigger. And the
Right.
trigger comes from the ego. And because that all comes from resistance and denial and things that we don't want to look at within ourselves. Right. So woof. I mean, and that's everything. So when we start looking at that, the ego goes, oh, well, that's overwhelming. Thanks for pointing the finger to me.
Right. It's like, oh, that's just way too much for me to look at. Let me just shut down real quick.
I just need to go for a walk right now.
Right. Right. Let me get a little nature in here.
But I found that, it's just a matter of, and it's not so, yeah, we start defining our friendships differently. And
Right.
here's what it comes to when we commit to self-responsibility. Oh, look, there's one of our 7 topics.
I know.
And we commit to trusting, which is up another of our 7 topics.
That's right.
It changes the way we interact with people, because what I've noticed is that there are many people who I'm very connected with, and when we connect from a place of the heart and a place of love, and when we allow ourselves that connection that's in fluidity, then we can be in each other's reality for 5 minutes and then move on. And then when we're guided to be called together again, then we're guided to be called together again. And I have many people in my reality that are like that. It's like, okay, so I'll talk to them once and then a year will pass.
Right.
And it's like I feel them with me as connected all the time, but it's not like they needed to be in my presented reality. But then all of a sudden it's like, oh, yep, it's time. It's time to gather, time to get together, time to connect, here. And then it's always perfect in whatever reason. And it's so fluid that way. So then there comes again the interaction without need, right?
Right.
And so we can say that it's funny. The further in the peripheral of the soul tribe that we get, the more we're easy, the easier we find that. But the closer it gets to what we consider us, right? Like our kids and our
Right.
spouses,
Right.
yeah, what we consider our core
That
foundational.
nuclear family type relationship.
Yeah, those are the ones that we are really attached to and really have expectations of, which means we have beliefs that we have needs of, right?
Hmm.
And there's that, we make decisions all the time based on, well, will my kids, because we want our kids to approve as adults even now, right? So as
Yeah.
we want our kids to approve or engage with us in it or something like that, right? Or our spouse or our family in some way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
And it's so very subtle. Oh, but it's I just did this little thing. I did this little sacrifice just so my kids would be happy,
Right. Right. Yep.
or my spouse, or whatever. And there's a difference between compromise, and compromise is okay. Like, so compromise, look at that. That's sort of an ego word too, because it's like saying, I'm going to give away, I'm sacrificing something, and you're going to sacrifice something so that we can meet in the middle, instead of where do we meet in the middle in our authenticity now, which is a completely different
Exactly.
energy.
That's a whole different way of looking at that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, we're going to have differences. And because we all have individual journeys, and this is where we connect. So what I tell people a lot is, instead of looking at what we have that's different and what's alienated from each other, right,
Hmm.
is
Right.
start to really look at, well, how do I connect with this person? Where do we have commonalities, right? When we start looking at how do we connect based on commonality, then it changes the way we connect, because then we stop looking at it from a place of need, because that just means we're coming together from a place of resonance.
Right. Yep.
So, and that it's not an overnight thing.
No, it's really not. And it's an ever evolving thing, because I think so much of I know a lot of what I was triggered by this weekend was simply because I've been working on the course material for another one of our classes, the
Our
worthiness.
wonderland.
Right. And so much of it kept coming back to me as showing me things that I had unresolved within
Mm.
my worthiness. So that was, and I kept looking at that, and I kept knowing that, but that emotion still just wanted to just come roaring forward.
Well, because we think like, am I worthy? Like the subliminal thing is, right? If this person doesn't approve of this part of me, am I unworthy of being there, whatever, right?
Right. Right.
Name the role. Am I unworthy of being in this relationship? Am I unworthy of presenting myself this way because somebody doesn't believe it, right?
Right. Or I believed I was worthy, only to be found out that they really didn't think I was,
Right.
which just really is like getting turned head over heels in a wave, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, what's that about?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot, there's so many, the key is realizing every relationship is a reflection
Right. Right.
of
Right.
you, right? Back to you. And sometimes, so like the thing is to always step back and ask guidance. What is there for me to see here? What is there for me to do? What is there for me to be? What is there for me to remember? Right.
Right.
I would like conscious clarity on, like, or let me create conscious clarity on what to remember that this is presenting to me to look at within myself. Because really, any relationship, regardless of how we define it, that's what it's doing.
Right. Absolutely. I agree. I agree.
Yeah. So, when we start taking all those definitions of friend or relative or whatever out of the park, because it's all soul tribe, because we're all here crossing each other's paths, which means that we're all connected, right? Anyway,
Right.
so, and we've all agreed to have the interaction that we've had, down to the person, at the DMV that you saw for 5 minutes.
Right. And it's all perfect.
It's all perfect.
Right. There's no would have, could have, should have.
Yeah.
All perfect.
And you start to appreciate all those interactions
Right.
in a much different light. So, the key, I guess, for us to do today for our session is,
Well, I like what you said about maybe just remember to align with asking, what is there for me to be, do, have,
remember. Yeah.
remember,
Yep.
and all of that, and maybe just set the intention to align with that in everything we do,
Yeah.
not just when we're triggered.
Right. Right. And to, there's so many layers to this, because when I talk about relationships and what they serve for us, right? To know when it's complete, right? To be able to accept when it's complete and to let it go. To know when it's just to just be able to be present with every relationship in its fulfillment of the purpose of it being presented to you in every moment, right? And that's so free to say that way, because it's any relationship,
Right.
any interaction, and to be present with it so that you can have that consciousness, right? To have that remembrance, um to have that understanding of what to do, what to be with it, and to commit. I feel like committing to yourself, to it, to taking the self responsibility for what that's reflecting back to you, no matter who triggers you and no matter how. And instead of putting it on them, opening your heart to allow yourself to see it and what it's showing you about you.
Right.
Change or shift or release or whatever. That feels good.
That's a big, that's a, that's a lot.
If we think it is.
It was a lot of words. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, all of that.
All that. Okay.
You ready?
I am.
Everybody close your eyes, take a deep breath, and we all step out of separation back to wholeness and oneness. The intention to hold ourselves at the vibration where all of that is our truth. All right. Boy, there was a lot of chattering out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it finally got settled down and then we had to come back.
I know. It felt nice at the end. It was like, oh yeah, you're right. That's so tiring. It was so funny. That was sort of like the collective, like, oh, okay. But what about this? What about this? And then it was like little by little, the voices just started to calm down, and it was like, shh, yep,
Right.
this, yes. And then gratitude. There was a lot of gratitude at the end. It felt really nice. Anything on your part?
I just kept seeing these concentric circles and they would split apart and then come back together and split apart and come back together. And it was like, almost like, stop focusing on circles, just allow. And it was like, oh, okay. And everything, it's like the circles just went away and everything just kind of was allowed to be,
Right.
which felt really, really nice.
That makes me think of cells.
Mm-hmm.
Cells, they meet up when they need to interact, and then they
Right, right.
go on their merry way. So. Oh, that felt very nice.
Yes.
Everybody's hopeful this week. Look at that. Look at where you're triggered with other people now, or even in the past, like people you've walked away from, maybe that
Yeah.
you were triggered by, and do a review on that to say, okay, do I still feel there's something unresolved there? Whether or not you ever talk to or interact with that person again doesn't matter. It's to resolve and come around to looking at the mirror of apology and forgiveness and that acceptance, and then what it served for you, seeing what it served for you,
Mm-hmm.
what it was showing you, having clarity on what it was showing you, and then having gratitude for it showing that
Right.
individual showing it to you, because otherwise it was something that was in the closet.
Yeah, it's almost like this was a whole, we have now a term for it. It's ghosting. When you ghost someone, you just step away from them.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And culturally we think that's a bad thing, but sometimes it's
Right. Just is.
it just is. Yeah. Yeah, there's about 5,000 more layers to that, but I feel like that's it for today.
Absolutely.
And so keep your eyes open. This week we're we're putting all this stuff out for the new Wonderland program. The first month is worthiness, the start of May.
11
And
days.
yep. And so come and join us for that adventure, because we're going to be looking at these things daily and doing energy work and shifting and affirmations and stuff to really, really clear out the closets in such a
Right.
huge way. I'm so excited about it. So
Yeah.
very excited. All right. So, and then we'll see you next Monday.
Yep.
Will you be available? I know you're traveling, so you'll be available Monday.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll see you next Monday at a regularly scheduled time, 9:30 Eastern. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni.
signing off with this week's Ascended World. Have a great one, everyone.
Bye-bye.